Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the IVES number 221B15 flush pole. This is a satin nickel clear-coated flush pole. Typical, classic, decades-old construction from IVES. They probably have this in catalogs going way back. So a 221 is the typical flush pole that you're going to see in garden variety, regular standard sorts of installation. This is going to be just the typical 2 1/8 inch size. This is made of brass and has a satin nickel finish with a clear coat on it. And when I say garden variety, I mean, you know, suburbia. 1960s construction, the bypassing doors in the bedrooms, those are all going to be full of 2 1/8 inch style round flush poles. If someone says they want a flush pole, this is the one that we're really thinking of. This is the builder's quality sort of concept. It's a very simple installation. It doesn't take a lot to get it installed into the door. It doesn't take a lot to prep it. And you're going to find these all over the place. Why this client is buying this? Well, they might be changing the finish on their doors in terms of the hardware. They might be doing a new installation and they need to match the existing. That would be why. There are other options when it comes to flush poles, to be sure, but this would be hands down most common. Let's take a couple of basic dimensions, then we'll look at the supporting information on the item. So an OD, they've got it at 2 7/16. I'd say that would be about correct. Then they have the cup diameter, and that's where the 2 1/8 comes in. A depth of the unit realistically is about 7/16. Overall to the outside of the lip, almost a half of an inch. Installation of this is going to involve a round hole, probably a router, and it would of course be appropriate to have this routed into reinforcing. You're going to need reinforcing to attach this hardware. They do include a couple of brad nails. And those brad nails are used to pierce through this little triangle area here, where you can take a very small center punch and flare that out. And then there's another one right here. So they're on opposite sides of each other. And you can kind of see both of them, in fact, at one time. And you'll run your little brad nail with your nail set right through there and secure them that way. They don't come out. If they are installed down to a door that doesn't have any reinforcing, that might just be hollow core. You could probably just drive that triangle prep out and fold it back and around and hope that it'll stay in place, which it will. This material, unless you are intending to pull it off the door, does not come off or loose. I've never seen such a situation. Let's switch to the screen view where we can take a look at the extended description along with the supporting documentation. Now here is the item that we are looking at, and our extended description information is here. It's a flush pole with a 2 1/8 cup diameter, 2 7/16 overall. That depth is about 7/16. Ideal for use on sliding doors. Built-in prong design eliminates the need for screws or brads and facilitates installation. I would use both if possible. Packed with 2 escutcheon pins for added holding power. Made from wrought brass. Okay. The process of wrought brass is an economical method by which brass is worked, especially when it comes to builder's hardware. Now we have some supporting documents here. Let's look at the product brochure first, and that's going to allow us to see variations on or at least the pages where this item comes out of from the catalog. The 22 is not uncommon. That's a very thin piece of brass, wrought brass material as well. It's very thin on the edge. It might only be, 25 thousandths thick. It's very thin. And what's nice about that is it doesn't project off the door very much. Will come with a couple of screws. This is a finger pole, and these finger poles, it's literally 1 inch on the outside. Has a 3/4 inch inside diameter, very appropriate for light doors, very thin doors, small doors. You would not use a finger pole to slide a 2'6", 6'8", even a hollow core door. You'd use a full-size 2 1/8 inch pole, flush pole, which is the 221. There it is. Okay. The 222, we don't have an opportunity to use that one very often. Low profile makes this pull ideal for louvered, bifolding, or wardrobe doors. Like I said, I don't see this used with this open back very often. The 223 is nice, gives you a bit of a radiused preparation. If you have hardware that kind of mimics that radiused prep, that might look very nice. 227 is a little bit bigger version, and since we're talking about sliding doors, if you have a pocket door, the 230 edge pull is a classic design. That's several decades old. And if you're really talking about pocket doors, the 42 is the means by which you can create privacy when you're on the inside of a sliding pocket door. This will give you the ability to basically prevent entry from the exterior when you have this sliding door bolt engaged. Very rare. I probably only sell one of these every 5 years. It's even rarer to find someone who knows how they work and what they do. If you were to search our site for IVES 42, you'll not only find the product but a video that I created about that. Then you have more modern designs of passage and privacy sliding door hardware here. Going to the next document, let's look at cut sheet. That's a technical drawing, really, showing you, and here's to emphasize what I said earlier about it being a classic, ubiquitous garden variety design. If you'll pay special attention to the date of this drawing, June 22nd of 1954. This has not changed in 65 years, 70 years. So there you go. Not a lot has changed in that regard. Showing you how you flare that prong out with your center punch. You can flare that out, then run your brad nail in there. You know, they're clearly showing it without a brad nail prep required. Installation. That's a this document is probably from the probably the 1980s. This sort of look, very typical. They're just showing you to drill that hole, 2 1/8 inch bore, 7/16 deep. You know, take your center punch and flare those prongs out. Okay. How are you going to go about prepping this? Well, I would use a router. I would use a router with a template that I would clamp onto the door. I would, what I would probably do is I would take my door. If I'm going to put, you know, I'm going to have 2 doors naturally. Whoop. Or it could be a pocket door as well. It does not have to be bypass. Okay, so you can get the idea that we've got a pair of you know, bypass doors here, right? Okay, so let's do this. So you're going to, you know, put a prep here. You're going to put a prep here. What I like to do is I like to, if I'm going to do a new installation, I will certainly take an audit as to where all of the other holes are drilled in an existing space to make sure that I match my dimension from center line to floor. Generally 36 inch is going to be really common for residential applications. Doesn't mean that's where you have to be, but that's certainly going to be in the realm of a standard dimension. It will also be compliant with handicap height, but this hardware is not handicap compliant. There are such pieces of equipment for sliding doors that are handicap compliant. I'm not aware of any that are bypass. They're going to work the way you want them to work. So an accommodation would have to be made for that. But you know, there are certainly handicap compliant material for sliding doors. If I was going to make a template, I might take my door. I might, you know, if my prep's going to be here, I might make a template that was, you know, a piece of 1x material, and I might put my hole in it where I need to drop my router into it, and I might make this, you know, let's say 42 inch tall, and let's just say 8 inch wide, okay? And I would take this and I would place it here, and I would clamp it to the bottom of my door, which means that I've created the prep from here to the bottom of the template to where I always want it to be from the floor, assuming that my undercut dimension was going to be uniform. I wouldn't have a problem with that. If I had a lot of them, I would make a template, and I would make it as easy on myself as possible. I would take that template, I would use a couple of clamps, I would drop my router, and I would make quick work of it. And the advantage of that is you're going to take this edge and flush it to here. You're going to take this edge and flush it to here. And you're going to be in the right spot every single time. So easy. Being lazy is actually advantageous because your brain will automatically think of the steps, the least amount of steps necessary to achieve the goal, even when that involves taking an hour to creating yourself a template. The size that you would make, this 2 1/8 inch hole that you need to net, is going to be based on the diameter of your collet that's in your router, etc. But that would be really easy work to go through. And then once you do that, you've got a template for life. Let's finish up this video on camera, but before we do that, let's take a quick look at the IVES manufacturers page within our site. And while that page loads, you'll be able to review not only all of the IVES products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog and other encyclopedic documents that are there, which I'll show you in a moment. I am partial to IVES because I'm familiar with their part numbers, number one. There's no doubt. I've been working with their part numbers for 30 years, so it's easy to have part number recall, and it's, less of an obstacle to be able to work with their product line. So all the IVES products that we sell are here, page after page. The manufacturer's website, the full line catalog, whatever the current catalog will be. A couple of interesting documents here. You want to see what IVES was making in 1904? There's the catalog. How about 1896? You can pull that document up, take a trip back in time. 1896 to 1897 price list. IVES was really known for window hardware, and they still are, sash locks and sash lifts, and other pieces of builder's hardware like these mortise bolts. And what's really interesting about looking at this material, and while the designs have certainly changed, the fundamental operation has not evolved at all. What was being done in the 19th century is the same work that's being done today on sash locks. Even though they've changed ever so slightly, I don't see a design that absolutely mimics the current unit with a curved and scalloped sort of retainer here. But this sash lift, this sash lift, not the etched material. I'm looking for, I don't see it. But, that single finger sash lift has not changed in a century. This shutter bar, they still make shutter bars. It's the same material. It's hardly ever changed. It's gotten probably thinner and, less costly to manufacture, but the overall concept hasn't changed at all. And one nice thing about being able to go back in time and look at these old catalogs is because, for me, a client will call and have a problem with a piece of hardware from 30 years ago. Having access to the document will allow me to be able to this is from 1904, and this piece of equipment here has hardly but changed at all. This piece of equipment ain't changed at all. That sash lock. Anyway, being able to get to seeing what the client has from 20, 30, 80, 100 years ago is very helpful. These ventilating sash locks, just, 1904, it ain't changed. I don't know that IVES still makes them. I think they've relatively recently discontinued them, and someone must make ventilating sash locks because those are very common. But being able to solve problems today is also dependent on being able to look back in time to see what was available once. Let's finish up this video on camera. Okay, in conclusion, the name IVES is synonymous with not only builder's hardware like this 221 flush pole, but with many other items such as trim and auxiliary hardware like kick plates, push plates, large ladder poles, and pivot hardware and pin and barrel hinges. That link to the full product catalog is handy because it will allow you to familiarize yourself with their entire product line. They're under the umbrella of Allegion, and sister companies to IVES would be Glenn Johnson and Zero weather stripping, and Monarch, which is Falcon, and Schlage, and LCN, and Von Duprin, and Doramatic. So a comprehensive deployment of hardware solutions Allegion puts through, and IVES is their trim and auxiliary component of all of that. I'm partial to them. They're good quality product, especially their pivots, in the sense that if you ever do commercial pivots, you might want to take a look at their pivots, because if you're new to pivots, their installation instructions are a bit more accessible to the person who's just going to do it the first time and they're nervous about making the vertical axis of pivoting completely plumb. So check all that out. Thank you very much. Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply.